got the tea. Everybody, this is SIFU NIKOS podcast. I have my man JC here. I'm going to let him introduce himself. JC, give it to us, man. Where are you from? What do you do? All that stuff.
Oh man, born and raised in Las Vegas. Blessed to be doing Qigong and Tai Chi and, Taoist arts pretty much my entire adult life. Started when I was 19 years old, met my teacher at 20, trained with him 20 years straight, actually much longer. And he's very authentic. You've met him, Grandmaster Ba. He passed away a few years ago, but he left myself with a wealth of knowledge to pass on, help mankind. The Qigong, the Tai Chi, the Yang style, the Chen style. Taoism, I went through my 10-year Taoist priest training program, 10-year Buddhist priest training program with him, 8 years of dragon dancing. I mean, I'm like old school character now, man. Just turned 50 and I'm like, okay, I'm
50.
old school.
Well, you don't look it, man.
I just turned 50. Yes, sir. We had the same birthday, bro.
I know. Hey, guys, we're December 2nd birthdays. We're December 2nd. So that means our Christmas and our birthday did just get put together in one,
Yeah.
So,
Now I'm just I sold my school January 21st, and I'm here in my home school, and I love it. Less overhead. I don't necessarily have to teach 100% for my income, so I kind of pick and choose better students. And I'm out at the park a lot. And my teacher is really cool because a couple months ago, I read an old article from my teacher's teacher, Marshall Hull, and he talked about like in the late 60s how he didn't like to be in artificial studios, that he was out in these parks and stuff because there's just so much more encompassing awareness, and so that's where I'm at now. And yesterday, I just got another, a company hired me to teach Tai Chi and 3 days a week. And
that's
then
awesome.
to like a corporate almost position. I could do all my tea events and all these things. And it's for these like $1 million condominium complex. So
that's beautiful.
What we do is only a matter of time before, like one of my contemporaries, this guy named Damon, he just got hired like a 6+ a year figure job. He's teaching Qigong and Tai Chi to a corporation and all their employees. It's over 6 figures a year. It's just one job.
Yeah. See, let's dive into that, because I've always believed that the fundamental nature of Tai Chi and Qigong and meditation should be incorporated into those larger corporations with hundreds, if not thousands of employees, because they are the ones that are sitting maybe with bad posture, not maybe figuring out how to breathe during high stress situations, which I think is overlooked because, they're day in, day out, focused on the computer, focused on their work. And sometimes they even bring that home and they forget to separate their energies and separate their work from their home life, and they carry that stress over. And so I think that personally, Tai Chi should be invested into all those things. So what you're doing and what you're a part of sounds phenomenal. I mean, what do you think about where we could take Tai Chi into that corporate world and even further, of course?
I think like a guy, once someone does it and shows like a Fortune 500 company, you get a job like that, and then a year goes by and you got 10% less call-ins, you got less people visiting the doctor or whatever, you have a little increased sales and productivity through your employees, then hello. Then what we're doing in the next 10 or 15 years might be some of the most sought after things in as far as healthcare and preventative and productivity and things like that in the corporate setting. So we're on the right path right now.
Most definitely. I like how you said into the healthcare, because I think it should be considered as a part of the healthcare of most of these bigger businesses. So
what I've noticed lately is I get, I'm taking calls almost every day, and people are actually pronouncing Qigong correctly. That's a first sign they're not saying Qigong, or they're stuttering through it. They're saying, oh, they're looking for Qigong and they're looking for Tai Chi, and yeah, we already know that Harvard and all these, biobehavior and colleges have already proven the health benefits of all these arts. So it's just a matter of, mainstreaming them. I have
Yeah.
a guy that's kind of helping me. I have my veterans program that I started. I started a nonprofit with the idea that, if my nonprofit takes in $100,000 donation, that pays my yearly, like income, and then I
Right.
can go out and I can teach veterans for free Tai Chi.
Oh, that's lovely.
Or
So what
yeah, so
made you start that?
I started that like 2 months ago with a guy that I'm working with. This guy that he worked with Tony Robbins, and he works with the UFC. Um,
Nice.
and the goal is that, what he was trying to help me with is bring it down to like a more accessible level.
Right.
Not
Yeah.
everyone's going to understand the 13 postures and do that. But just making it like accessible and kind of teaching me like how to, when you create an organization like a nonprofit, and then you want to teach veterans, you have this big flood of energy and people that want to give you that money to then go do that.
Right.
When you have your own business, then you have to convince people to invest in your business. So like for you, like giving away classes or half off to
Right.
veterans or fire department people or police officers, if you get involved in those groups, you bring a whole big groups of families and members with them.
You really do.
Yeah, and I know you. I mean, you're doing a lot of great stuff, and
Yeah.
you're a young cat too, and you're on it. So if you
Yeah.
just keep doing what you're doing, you're
Right.
set. You're setting yourself up for the long run.
Well, I appreciate that. And I appreciate what you're doing for veterans because I don't know if you know, my father was a veteran, and many other people I know, and it's sometimes seems like they don't get the help they need, always. And so if we can help with a small percentage of that, that would be exponential right there. I love that.
The guy I worked with, they work with the UFC, and they get 60 veterans every Friday. 60,
Oh
50
wow,
to 60
that's
veterans. They take them over to the UFC for like 2 hours. They train them, and then they have a guy right now that teaches them these breathing methods.
oh
So
really
they
cool.
actually looked out and they came to me. That like they found me and said, we have this guy now, but we want a Qigong master to come in and work with these veterans.
You,
So when I looked at the veterans
you,
program, they have these, they have this 3-step thing. They recognize they're being triggered. They take a deep breath, and then they reflect on something positive, like their child being born. And this is the way that to get out of PTSD. Well, to recognize you're being triggered, to us, that's that posture,
yep.
which then allows you to take a
Taking that
deeper
breath.
breath. And then, instead of reflecting on something from the past, then we're going to teach them this inner smile practice.
Hmm.
So how to like bring up the virtues. So I'm kind of using their program, but I've incorporated it with the Qigong principles to match up what the military uses for PTSD.
So I think you said something there that a lot of Tai Chi people need to start working on is taking the already successful programs, and we model ourselves off of those, because maybe our traditional ways aren't as accepted in that world. So if we were to present them in that way, they would be more accepted, because they would see the documented success rather than saying, all right, this might take you 5 years to learn, but are you ready? We need to break it down like that. I think that's a very brilliant idea, JC. That's cool, man.
Also, I just figured, like, let's just say Qigong
Right.
is it might not, because then you got to explain Qigong. But if you say, I'm going to teach you some breathing methods that help with stress,
Right.
that's more accessible to everyone.
Everyone.
Then you don't have to explain what Qigong is.
Hmm.
So yeah, but people know what Tai Chi is, so you do that with Tai Chi. So I'm gonna teach you some slow, gentle moving exercises that will help with stress and help with your joint health.
Right.
And yeah, you're just really kind of keeping it very superficial for that audience. But for your other audience, then it's the opposite.
Right.
You're talking the language of 13 postures, Pong, Lu, Jian, Kai Li. You're explaining
Yeah.
everything on the Tai Chi levels.
They don't know what that is. So what is, if I have to ask you, what is Qigong? If you could explain it, however you want, because from my experience, when we last spoke, I think you said you were medical Qigong and you'd practice that through your dashi. And I just want to know what your explanation of Qigong is.
Yeah, so no, I say Qi is when it for Qigong, it's energy and breath, and Gong is skill. So energy, breath, skill. That's a very modern day term though. So that
Yeah.
term was around since around 1917, 1913, it was coined. Before that, the term of Dao Yin was used, or even better, Yang Shang, which is like nourishing the life force. But in like the late 60s, when the communist revolution happened, if you were associated with the Dao Yin or the Yang Sheng arts, then you were going to be ousted. So the name Qigong was also kind of revolutionized that so that you can kind of practice these arts still under a new name, under a new guise. So there's really four branches of Qigong. So when I learned from Dashi, I learned medical Qigong as a practice for yourself, like the Bois Jin, the five elements, the six healing sounds, like these traditional Qigong exercises. The medical college teaches you, it's much, much deeper. It teaches you like how to be like an acupuncturist, all the stuff that they have to go through. It's a 4-year degree. It takes 4 years. You can't shorten it.
Hmm.
But then you learn how to treat other people. You learn how to treat other people on the table, diagnose the 8 sensations, you're diagnosing their organs, you're doing pulse reading, you're looking at their eyes, you're being a Chinese doctor. And then there's the martial Qigong. Martial Qigong is like our iron body training. Now, in the martial Qigong, for me, is the Nei Gong, the internal skill that should be used in Tai Chi, which is the reverse breathing, which is learning how to use the Fa Jin, which is, it's the
Right.
martial gland circulation, to extend the energy out of the body. And then you have kind of like originally it was just like the spiritual branch, which was, you're using Qigong to become enlightened. But most people really, frankly, don't use it for that anymore. So that third branch now is really like a fourth branch, which they call scholarly Qigong. So scholarly Qigong has its like meditations. And so like in these branches, you can say in medical Qigong, you have purge, tonify, and regulate. You purge out with the sounds, the negative emotions. You tonify with the virtuous qualities and colors, and then you regulate through certain practices. In martial Qigong, you have the obvious, which is your muscles get bigger. You have the hidden, which is your tendons and ligaments get stronger. And then you have the mysterious, the ability to issue Fa Jin. Or in medical Qigong, we don't say Fa Jin because that's technically an incorrect language. Fa is issue, Jin is power. So Fa Jin is actually a broad range of types of Jins. It's better to say, well, in Fa Jin, we issue Fa Jing, Fa Qi, and Fa Shen. Fa Jing is when you learn to use your body mechanics, your tendons and ligaments, and winding it, and then release. That's Fa Jing.
Right.
Fa Qi is what most people would probably think is Fa Jin. It's an energy. It's your emotional energy and your mind issuing some type of power also. And then Fa Shen is like your imagination. So your imagination of when you issue that power, do you see their heart exploding or them flying through the brick wall? So that's Fa Shen, adding your imagination to your Fa Jing.
Wow.
So the way that I learned Tai Chi is like, we would say Fa, like Fa Pong,
Right.
Jin, Pong Jin, or Lu Jin, Kai Jin, Li Jin, all these different Jins. And then you would say On Jin, or I have spiraling Jin. I have different types of Jins, different types of powers that I'm using in my Tai Chi. So that let me conclude that martial Qigong is teaching you those methods. So, like Dr. Yang Jingming has a DVD called Nei Gong for Internal Martial Artists. That matches exactly how I learned from Dashi, that internal martial arts system that goes with, with him, it was whether you do Tai Chi, Yang or Chen, you Bagua, Xing Yi, all those internal martial arts should be following the reverse breathing pattern in learning these types of Jins as powers.
So they all seem like they have a extreme core relatability, and it almost seems like they flow effortlessly once you understand them.
I mean, the original school is you learn the medical, then you apply that to the martial, the obvious, the hidden, and the mysterious. And then once you had the martial and your body was strong, then you're really ready for the spiritual training, which is by far the most rigorous. Like doing Kung Fu forms, that make you strong, but sit still for an hour. Tell me which one's harder to do. So the original way was you built up for the spiritual training to sit for long periods of time, to have the discipline to do. So in the spiritual Qigong, you have gathering, housing, and utilization, learning how to gather and holding it, and then the internal alchemy that goes with whatever practice that you're working on.
So that gives me some perspective, actually, what you just said, because I've often heard that doing meditate, I mean, just in general, when people are like, oh, I can't meditate. And I kind of understand where they're coming from, because in a sense, I believe they're trying to start at the end of what you said rather than the beginning.
Yes, sir.
And so that makes sense why someone would say, well, I can't sit there for an hour or even 20 minutes because I just, I can't, my head, I can't, silence it. That makes sense because they haven't gone through the proper steps from the beginning to the end to solidify the ability to meditate better or even get into that stillness. So in a sense,
it's a very conditioned body to be able to sit for long periods of time.
Yeah, it does. It's a mind-boggling. And I had the experience of trying the meditation first and getting frustrated at myself a long time ago. I'm like, hey man, I've been doing this for a while. Why can't I sit here for an hour? And then I realized to myself, I wasn't giving myself the chance, the opportunity to do that. So you have to take a step back. And I think that process that you just said is the key to getting to a holistic meditation rather than just what you think is meditation.
Well, every year I taught my meditation. I always would say with my internal students, like, I should just advertise this, the truth. Like, do like meditation is painful. Like no one wants to advertise it. Everyone's like meditation, oh, peaceful. No, meditation is freaking painful. Can you do it for 10 minutes without your legs falling asleep? It's the most painful of all the training is as you can do all your Tai Chi forms, but do standing posting for 20 minutes. That's harder than doing the form slow for 20 minutes.
It is. So a question, because I've noticed in my older years that I don't do my form as often as I do my standing. Is that similar for you?
Well, I do more Chen style with my form because that's more of a workout for me.
Yeah.
Is where I have like 4 or 5 Tai Chi Yang students per week. And my older students, like their practice is me just guiding them through a 20-minute Yang form.
Right.
An hour-long class and doing the warm-up. So I get a lot of Yang practice in just with my teaching. So, my personal practice is more Chen style, but I'm more outdoors now where it's like for me, I'm looking for the most uneven ground, as high as elevation I can go, because as I'm stepping down longer things or I'm on a slope and I have to rise up into a position that takes a lot more balance. So
More control.
like when I'm on flat surfaces now in this last year, like I feel like it's like that's for, who's gonna listen to this? That's for pussies, dude. If you're taking on flat, solid ground, just remember this saying. City boys don't mess with country boys, and country boys don't mess with mountain men. Train in the mountains, you're going to be naturally stronger than the same guy doing the same routine in the city.
Exactly.
That's
True.
why the pros go up into Big Bear and train up in the high elevation in the mountains, to work on the cardio and the endurance.
So I like that aspect.
What's that?
I was just saying, I like that aspect of taking yourself out of that norm and going into the elements and really testing yourself. And you're in warm weather too, aren't you?
Yeah, that makes a huge difference.
Yeah.
One example I'll show you is like, there's a lot like in our system, we have like, where you might, let's say you pick and you land and then you do, that makes sense. But like in nature, you're not going to do that if you want to twist the knee. So then,
No. Right.
but the ball it changes into more martial. And so I just found like, I was looking for like, even in training in the water, like a couple feet deep and then having to step through water at the lake. The more I can train myself that way is what I was really looking for this last year since I sold my center. Is
So
to
what?
train like the warriors do.
Yeah, and I think that is an aspect that you don't see very often in this art. We often get comfortable in our dojos. We often get very comfortable in flat ground, but in reality, you could be in grass, you could be on the mountains, you could be in sand. I have a story where I went to Miami and I was doing, I was having fun, but I was on the beach and I was like, man, let's do some Tai Chi. Wow. On the sand is way different.
Yeah.
It is way different. And I found myself obsessing with it because I love that my foot would be here and then I'd slide and I would have to adjust my posture, instantaneously. But that's really what you're speaking about, is taking yourself out of that element and putting yourself into something that's uncomfortable and embracing it.
Well, like you said, the grass, I've noticed like, when you're on a flat surface, you always know that step is going to be good. But on grass, you might have a little mound of grass like this. So as you go down, you feel that. So then there's another moment that you got to move over here,
And really,
and that's a little bit makes your form a little bit slower. And then that's going to challenge you, a lot more than if you're just on that perfect, even surface all the time.
love it. So what prompted you to sell your business? What prompted you to leave that? Because you were
COVID,
doing
of
tonic.
course,
What's that?
COVID, of course.
Yeah.
I got really lucky though. So as soon as it happened, I started saving my money, and then it was like my business got slower than when I first opened the business. So there was,
Right.
there wasn't even like I had my course was already going, so I had to finish those out. But then as time got on, people were separating that, some of the students that were really into masking and that, they
Right.
didn't want to come anymore. And then, so then it was just like this core group. And then I'd sit there all day and not one single person would come through the store.
Mm.
So I got lucky though, because then someone came in and they bought it off me. They took over the lease. So I got out of that. I never paid another rent. So I
That's
really
free.
walked out of there with like 6 figures. And I was in a better position than I've ever been in my life.
Right. I just remember seeing all those teas and herbal, I was like, man, what's he going to do with that? But it's good that someone came in and took care of that. I was really worried about
What
that.
I did is I just took the best, what I really sold a lot. And now my online business,
Right.
it makes $2,000 to $4,000 a month.
Oh, that's
I
beautiful.
sell a lot of digital downloads. My number one seller, my Qigong Wellness, I've sold over 100 of those digital downloads.
That's awesome.
So when people buy those, they just get the download, they get the PDF sheet, and I don't even have to send them an email. It's all automated. So now
Make
I have
sure you send that to me.
Yeah.
That way I can put it in the post. I can put the links and stuff.
Okay.
Send me all that stuff.
Yeah, so now I have my iron body training online, for $49, and I sell those all around the country now too. And so,
Nice.
I almost sell a digital download every single day. I have some at $2.99, $4.99, $19.99, $49, $100, $500, $800. I have all different tiers.
Oh, wow.
So I just, and those, so that's the way that I created a better lifestyle, more sustainable, more long-term, for me.
And you get to spend more time with your family. So that's important.
Yeah. And so now I teach all I do is I teach like 2 to 4 hours a day. And then, I'm off in the afternoon and my online business does well. And so I got a better lifestyle now for myself.
I'm half expecting to see you in a year in a mountain with a staff and a cloak. Is that JC?
My new hat now. I got my big hat now.
Oh yeah.
I got some other plans. I might do another business here, but I'll do it differently.
Yeah.
It would be with an investor. Like I owed, that was 100% me on both sides.
Wow.
So if I did another thing, I would do an investor, where they handle all the money and they handle all the backside, and I just get to do what I do, like be the teacher.
So
And so
in that element, as far as business goes, for Tai Chi, for martial arts in general, do you think that it is almost impossible for because I do Tai Chi, but I also now teach personal training and weightlifting and stuff. Do you think that it's almost impossible for us to just strictly teach Tai Chi as a business? I do too.
Because if you just think about the numbers, because now I'm into the numbers, you have a studio. Like if I had a studio right now, then I need 10 or 15 more consistent students just to pay the rent. So why, at this point, why I take that on? You're doing it right, where you do your Qigong, or your Tai Chi, but you do like the personal training, which is more
Right.
accessible or open to all these other, where you're at, your demographic, your clients.
Well, I found that the mindset of someone is more willing to go into the weight loss and the physical aspect there, and then I can say, why don't we try some breathing? And I don't even let them know it's Tai Chi or Qigong. We're just doing breathing, like you were saying with that other program. We're just doing breathing, or why don't we stretch these 9 joints, or blah blah blah. So it does end up being full circle in the end, but you do have to put another name on it. So yeah, but as
doing some digital stuff, and you're getting your stuff out there, so I would just keep doing what you're doing. My suggestion was, in the back of the scenes though, work on creating like your own product, and I even did like that thing it's called Spreadshirt, and I sold 10 pieces of clothing, and with that, it's all third-party drop ship. So I only make $9.50 a shirt, but I'd never have to have the inventory. The people order it and it goes to their house, they deal with it.
Right.
So the more that you can create passive income, what you're doing, that's what I would suggest.
Yeah, and I think that's important for the martial arts world and business, is passive income now. I know that we love that physicality, and we love to help individuals one-on-one. I have always felt the love and power and connection with the student, but I know that to help more people, we have to kind of get out of those ways and get ourselves out there to the masses through online courses, through those PDFs that you're saying that you did or do, and I think that's the way to do it. So now I think it was a level of control that I had to give up, because I personally want to see my Tai Chi student through each step of the way. What you can do, but you can't do it as tediously as I would like anyways.
Yeah, or you can have tiers. You can have like those subscriptions where the people that download, out of state, that's a different type of student than the person that wants to seek someone out. But in some places there might not be someone.
Right.
So they need people only left to that. So yeah, so then, like some of those ones are just the digital downloads, but I also do some that are like, they go through my courses online Zoom. So then we're just like this, you and me right here. And I stand up and I show them some practices, and then we do a lot of the theory and stuff, just like we're doing this interview on Zoom.
Awesome.
So then I can watch them, or I'll say, you go through the course, and if you really want me to help you, what I've been doing lately is like these workshops are working really good for me. I'm working with I'm trying to capture like people like coming in and out of town from conventions and things like that. So they come over here for like 2 hours, and I show them Qigong, Tai Chi, sell them some teas, and so that whole package is like $200,
right?
And it's for 90 minutes.
That's beautiful.
And so then when they leave though, they got a handout, they got the practice, they got some companion videos, and they got a box of tea. And that's very engaging them to set up to purchase something else down the line, or train with me another time.
I like to hear that.
Trying to create a menu, where you have like a trifold, and you have like your services. And then, of course, the more people compile the services, they train with you here, then they get a discount. And so the better menu you have. But what I learned is, don't discount your regular price. Start like at I really want $50 an hour.
Right.
So my courses are $800. So then I could say, well, I'll give it to you for $700. Oh, that's too much. I'll give it to you for $600. I'm having a Christmas special for $500.
Right.
for 10 lessons, but that's really where I wanted to be all along. So,
Exactly.
that's a really important thing too, is not give it away.
See, I had to learn that the hard way. So I'm it's good that I'm hearing it from someone else too, because I had to learn that the hard way. In my younger years, I keep saying that. I'm embracing this age. But seriously, I was giving courses away for free. And I found that people didn't value that as much as you would think they would.
Oh, not at all.
Because if it's free, then what's your obligation to it? You have none. Uh, if it's $1,000, you're like, shit, I need to get there, or
Attention.
yeah, get your undivided attention.
All those younger cats that were with me that I just let them train for free,
Yeah,
all of those guys are gone.
yeah,
Those you don't want those students. Trust me, at 50 now, I tell you, be selective, and you got to have some skin in the game. You got to have some, and maybe you can do some bartering, or you can give it away, or let someone do payments, but still make them give you something
right.
up front to do it. So they're invested in it because they're going to value it more. They're going to stay with it long term. And yeah, I've given away, and everyone that I've given away, I've never seen those people again.
Me either.
Yeah.
So yeah, that
Yeah.
yeah, man. I enjoy what you represent. I often refer to you as a spiritual warrior. Yeah, seriously. Anytime I mention your name, that's what I'm like. Hey, JC, the spiritual warrior.
That's a compliment for me. Thank you, good sir.
It's just it's what I perceived. It's your energy. It's our entanglements that we've had, our meetings, everything that we've done. I just get this great aura from you, and I get this great energy from you. But that doesn't come with that comes with something, right? So your teacher, I don't know much about him, so I want to know where you got this from, because what I get from you is something so radiant and so powerful, but I want to know the source,
Yeah. Well, my story with Grandmaster Ball was, I was working at a health food store when I was 19, and he was coming in there. I didn't know who he was, because at the time he was the head of hospice in Las Vegas for 3 different hospice centers. So he was the grandmaster at the school, and on his free time, he was doing hospice, helping people pass over. So, when I was young, at one time I told someone I could shoot fire out of my hands. This is way before Reiki or anything around. So, of course, they told me I was crazy, and I never said that again. Well, when I started working at this health food store, there was a guy there named Vincent that was into Tai Chi and Qigong. So I would see him down the aisles of the health food store doing his little Tai Chi and stuff. And
right.
so I started reading this book of Qigong, Dr. Yang Jing Ming's book, 8 Sections of Brocade. And I came with something that it mentioned something about energy out of the palms or something like that. And I was like, oh, I remembered when I was a kid, and this was a way to explain it. So I started reading. I went through one book. I got into Dr. Yang Jing Ming's second book, which is the Iron Body Training. And then one day, Dashi came in the store, and somehow me and him started talking about Qigong. And I said, yeah, have you ever heard of Qigong? And he was like, yeah. Have you ever heard of this Iron Body Training? And he said, well, I'm actually the Grand Master, and I'm getting ready to start this Iron Body Training this week on a Wednesday. So I literally went that Wednesday, and I was with him for 20 years.
Can I pause you for a second?
Yeah.
As a 19-year-old, you had to have been like, what? Like, you had to be like, what are the odds of this man walking in? This is like a spiritual, universal sort of connection. Sorry, I just caught on to that. So,
but I mean, at that time, I was oblivious to that. It was just, I didn't even think it was anything.
Right.
We started with Iron Body Training, and then as I trained more Qigong, then, I got into Tai Chi, and then he was like, well, if you want more secrets of Tai Chi, I want you to start doing, some volunteer work. I want you to, take on this Buddhist priest training program to, work on your character. So then if down the line, I want to show you some more, hidden secrets. I know that you're, of course, you're evolved enough to use them and not abuse them, basically.
Right. Right.
But where his story comes from, is very unique. He lived in South Central LA.
Wow.
Like down there, like ran with gangs and real
Yeah.
tough. And then the late 60s in the communist revolution, a lot of those Taoist masters were ousted. Like my teacher's teacher, Cher Lu, was the abbot of the Taoist Golden Dragon Temple. So the Golden Dragon was around before me. So
Wow.
when they left, and then Dashi lived down in LA, he met a lot of these masters, Ark Wong, Cher Lu, Carl Totten, all these, Cam Yuen, all these famous like masters that were like leaving China to escape the communist revolution because they were going to be maybe even possibly killed because they were like these masters. So then he trained with these really authentic masters, and that's all he did his whole entire life. So
Man.
that's the beauty of now. I didn't realize it then, but now it's like, it's very fortunate that I have all this time with an authentic lineage and, these real practices. It's like I took 5 to 10 years to learn, and now people want to learn them in the first session. But that's just where we are. So
Yeah.
and then when I first started training with him, he was like, oh, I was like in awe of him. I thought
Right.
I thought he knew everything. I thought he could see through everything. So we would train every Wednesday at 7 a.m. And I would literally get up at 5 o'clock in the morning to train and be ready. So when I seen him at 7, I wasn't just waking up.
You were ready.
I was already trained up. And then I would go work a 9 to 5, and then I'd go back for Qigong and Tai Chi, and then like these spiritual warrior lectures that were like from 7 p.m. all the way to 12 p.m. sometime. And we did those for 10 years, those spiritual warrior lectures. So he would just, and a good portion of them was about hospice, about how not to die, better solve your problems before you get there, better forgive your people and, make amends. And then he would go into, these esoteric topics in Buddhism and Taoism and a system called Meat Sung, which is like a
I'm
real
not
form of
familiar.
esoteric Tibetan Buddhism. It's kind of like, sorcery and Taoist sorcery. And so, so then I became like I got my initiate name in 2000. And then I was ordained 10-10-10, a year the Golden Tiger. And that's when I got my priest name, Shifa Shu Shakya.
Oh, nice.
So we have a tradition that goes right back to the Shakya Buddha in our Buddhism, as the Shuyin, which is like the white cloud system. The temple's still there. There's one in Hawaii and there's one in China.
That's really nice.
Yeah, so I learned that, but at the end of the day, I don't really consider myself Buddhism, because he always said Buddhism is good for people that need to work on their character. They have all these Four Noble Truths, the 5 precepts, the Eightfold Path. They have all these,
right, character building.
In Taoism, it's only 3. The 3, the treasures. It's like be humble, be frugal, be good to your family. And so like that resonates more with me. I'm already a good person. I don't need all those boundaries and things to try to shape me into, being a good person. So, that was just the benefit of me training. And of course, I started competing and losing at first, and then, competing for many years. And, that was great to see you competing. I think that's good for people, even though some,
It is.
I'm sure you've come across it because you're more in the martial realm than I am. The people that are like, oh, Tai Chi isn't for competition, but you sure get better quicker. I sure see students go, woo, really quick before the competition.
I know. And I think the competition is amazing for the nerves. When you're doing your form, when you're in front of judges, when you're in front of people watching you, there's something that you have to overcome and fight with or work with, and that right there builds some character and builds something within internally that helps so much. So I agree with the tournaments. I think those are great.
I said that because that's what we said. Like I figured it out this last year, 21. I was like, well, that could be like the practical side of Tai Chi that you're you're learning to regulate your breathing and your emotions when you're under stress. So performing out there is actually giving you a chance to work on that skill.
It's assimilation of it.
Definitely.
Tremendously. So yeah, so Grandmaster, so when I met him, I was over the moon because he was just so cool. So for anyone watching, he's not this, it didn't seem like he was this guy floating around on a cloud. He was just down to earth, talked to me like a human, treated me like a human, treated me normal, and gave me minor pieces of advice. And I overheard him speaking to his students and just a very calm, collected individual. And you would just get a really warm sensation around him. I did. And he invited us out to his school, I think that was when I was there. Mm-hmm. Yeah, where the dragon heads were and stuff. Yeah. That was really cool to see. And
I've done like the dragon dance for Jackie Chan, and he was, really well respected. And like even the lion dancing is like a whole nother like branch of kung fu,
right?
Like traditional lion dancing. And he had people coming in from China and like New Mexico just to learn that system. And then he taught Southern Shaolin, he taught Xingyi, Bagua, Tai Chi, Yang Chen, Qigong. He was a Taoist, Wu shaman. He was the Buddhist abbot, so that's all he really encompassed, like that's all he did his whole life.
He lived
never had anything else to do but become a master.
That's truly amazing.
Like you're very fortunate that you're young and that you're working on your art where, you could say your contemporaries, they're going to work that 9 to 5 and then they're doing their practice after work.
No, this is mine.
So you've done a really good job of setting yourself up to train through your work life,
It's a must. So, I'll go crazy if I don't.
I just want to say, Nick, you're an inspiration because you're a younger guy. You're funny, you're charismatic, you know your stuff, you're a warrior. And so you have a really good chance of bringing out some of that real Tai Chi warrior, long term into what you're doing with your push hands. You're badass when it comes to that. So, just keep doing everything you're doing.
Well, I appreciate that. I really do, because I've invested a lot into this, and I love what it brings out, in me and others. That martial arts is a powerful thing. It's a friendship. You network. You get to meet other people. You get to see different movements and energies and stuff. And just throughout my journey, I've learned to embrace it and love it. So I think it's just one of those things where I've fallen in love with it. I have fallen out of love with it before too. So
yeah, I think when I sold my center, I got away for a while.
Yeah.
And so then when I came back, it was like, okay, well, now I'm so glad I did, because I would have never got that like outdoor training experience.
Exactly.
And now again, I have other sources of income, so I can, I turn away a lot of people. I'm only going to take on people that I feel is a good mesh for me and that they'll maybe continue. And so now, I get to be in a better position, where I'm at. So I'm thankful for the whole process too. It's all part of it.
Awesome. So what do you think the importance of I see all these weapons. What do you think the importance of training weapons is?
Well, I think originally, like I learned from Dashi, that it was weapons first, because people train these, especially the commoners.
Yeah.
They train with weapons first because they were just learning how to, defend their farm or whatever. So like our Yang saber, if you look at it, there's like older influences from Chen, is where the form looks more Yang. But I think that the benefit, like the way that I learned like, my teacher said, you learn the empty hand, then you learn the saber, which is the single edge, and this develops your lower dantian. So you get like this, moving, pushing, and this strength. And then, there's a whole system that goes with the saber. And then when you go into the double edge, the Jin, then your energy's developed now. You're like, you've made it through that Qigong too, and now you're the scholar. And so at that level, you're not using any force or strength, you're using technique and finesse, with the double edge.
Right.
Hence you're very graceful with that. But I think that, that at the double edge, we have some of the most esoteric practices in our double edge. So we, my teacher said, well, that's this is spiritual warrior form that you learn to, like, you know, you do that in your dreams, like you learn to have two swords.
Right.
And so like you can cut demons and things with your swords, like your sword fingers. So then you take that form and then you learn to do it two ways to do it in your head. One is just to do it in your head. And then the other one, which is the goal of that form is that you're learning to then like step outside your body. And so then it's my spiritual body doing the form, and I'm just standing there and I can see myself doing the whole sword form on the outside of my body.
Wow.
And so then this level is then, you know, you become obviously very powerful in your dreams.
Yeah.
You know, he was the last practice that he was really into was like the idea of like, you know, like my arm is already there now, and now I'm trying to follow my arm. My energetic body's already done well, of course. So that I'm trying to come into my energetic body, almost like I'm trailing behind my energetic body. So like that's kind of like in the sword, you learn to like step outside yourself, and then you can astral project, and you can, you know, you can mentally travel when you get to that level.
That's a lot.
And okay, I got more if you want. The other thing is just when you hold the sword, you know, we were taught to hold and see if you can make the tip vibrate. You
I
know, so
remember
learning how to
hearing that.
extend your energy through the sword. So then once you do that, then if you let the sword down, extending energy to one person is like nothing, because I've been extending it through the whole sword. And so this helps with, you know, and the sword mind. And so like when we got to the double-edged sword, another cool thing that we did is we would take the sword, put it on our dantian, and you learn to fuse the sword with your chakras. So then you think of your root chakra, and then you, like, some swords were 7 stars actually have 7 little stars. So then you fuse it, you turn it over, you fuse your chakras, and then the sword will speak a sacred name to you that only you know. So let's say it's called Shazam. And so then pretty soon your sword becomes like, if you see Lu Dun Bin, he's always with the pretty woman, but really the pretty woman is his sword. It can shapeshift. So the idea is you have this energetic sword you're carrying with you all the time, and in your dream, if you're being attacked, then you just say Shazam, and it comes to you.
Man,
you can do like esoteric stuff with.
I'm into that. That's so cool. I love that because it's a different explanation. I've heard that get the energy to the tip. I've heard that several times, and I've worked on that myself, but not have I worked on that astral projection. I've never heard of some of the spiritual name that it calls out to you. That's really cool.
It was a really important thing because that your spiritual sword is supposed to be different than your combat sword. Because then the spiritual sword, yeah, once you do that, it's also like at that time, this gives you this power of like authority. Like think of the power of Grayskull, you know, or any of these things. So the sword is like symbolic that you can wield like the Excalibur. You're noble enough. And so the sword mind is about like perfecting that oneness with you and the sword, and becoming at one with, you know, like everything this would be like in the Qigong, and becoming one. And so then once you have that, then you can call, that sword gives you the power to call, you know, a really good insight is at the end of our form, we have this thing that says, return from heaven's work. And so it's like, well, what is return from heaven's work? Because you only pulled out your sword to do heaven's bidding, like to kill the bad guy. And so this sword gave you like this authority to, you know, like to do heaven's will. And so this was the idea of like infusing it with these type of qualities. So then, you know, you're like this pillar of justice, and, you know, like you enact judgment of whatever, you know, on people, because but it's heaven's judgment, not yours.
Right.
So when you're done with all that, you need to return from heaven and be back to Nico.
So is this a process that you go through within your sword practice?
Yeah. This is like a 5-year process
without mushrooms.
Put
That's
some cotton
questionable.
cheese.
That's questionable.
They got those
There
pork
it is.
mushrooms in there. So no, with mushrooms.
Good, good. So, but seriously, I think I am so intrigued by that. So, sword, is that, did you learn sword first? Or is it,
You learn the empty, the saber, and then the double edge, because
okay,
that's the way the dashi said it was originally trained.
right, right,
And the truth of the double edge was that the double edge was only for the scholars, meaning that if your family had money,
right,
then you could become a scholar warrior. Because for one, the lower people didn't have the time to train. They had to work, in the fields, the rice fields.
right,
It was only the wealthy families that those kids became the high-end warriors because they didn't have to work, and their father usually, wasn't the mother, their father had the tradition that was passed on to the men. And so it was only because of you had the money and the time and the wealth you could
to do so.
acquire to be that type of swordsman. If not, you just were with the saber and you were just doing the hacking.
Right, to learn to
The
defend
double edge
yourself.
is, a lot more.
Nice.
You do the saber too, right? You have a
Yeah,
couple.
I do I have a 13 posture saber and then a 67 form sword is what I do. And the one, and I will put this out there to the world, JC has one of the most beautiful Tai Chi forms I've ever seen, and most beautiful whipping sword. It's like it glides through the air and it's just slicing those damn demons.
Sure. Well, the last thing that we learned with the sword, or I learned, was then to use the scabbard. And because
Yeah, that's another thing I didn't see much of from anybody else in as far as the tournament and as far as just in general, just watching people. I don't see the scabbard used often.
I think in the saber, it wasn't really there because they just kind of had a saber and it was like this, like a rake or something.
Right.
But the double edge was in like beautiful casings. And so yeah, it's like no swordsman ever pulled his sword out and threw his beautiful scabbard on the ground and then just did the
Right.
sword. A lot of times, like if you look in movies, a lot of times the high-end master wouldn't even take the sword out of the scabbard for lower end opponents.
Right.
Like in the Hero or whatever, they are in, they would just keep the sword in the scabbard and just smack you in the face if you were a low end. And it wasn't until, he really pulled it out
Where
when
things
he
are
really,
cracking.
and, then the scabbard, like if you're holding up this like this in the sword form, well, then you're going to just get your arm cut off.
Right. So you need
So
to
they
have
either
that
had a shield or they had the scabbard there for these moves
protection. Right.
to take the protection and then, the technique.
That's a good
So
way.
then it was like Dashi's like, well, I want you to only do your, your forms with the scabbard, the original way. So then that was kind of like, another part of the training too.
It's gorgeous, it's powerful, and it's meaningful. You can see it when you do it. Definitely.
Those moves make sense. And also then, he said, we'll turn the other one into like a double edge. So some of the old scabbards kind of had the point. So then when you're doing something like this, you also, the scabbard,
You're pulling it out.
So then there's a stab there, and then there's a stab there, and I got my protection, I'm blocking my arm, and I got my sword too.
I love it. I love it. So what would you give a beginner advice if they wanted to get into anything that you mentioned, the Qigong, the Tai Chi, meditation, sword? What is good advice for them to,
I would say to start getting into.
Go ahead.
Oh yeah. I would say starting to get into Qigong to balance the emotions and to, work on yourself to make yourself. So in Qigong, medical Qigong, there's three levels of medicine. The highest level of medicine is to help someone find their life purpose.
I agree.
So a lot of times our prescription is like a life purpose exercise. Describe your talents, describe how you would use those in a perfect world. What does a perfect world look like to you? So form of like a vision board almost. It helps people manifest their life purpose. The second level of medicine is to help someone live more virtuous every day in a more positive, optimistic outlook on the world. And then the third level is to treat physical disease. So with that in mind, recommend people starting with Qigong and trying to encourage them to live their life purpose and then trying to live more virtuous. And then Tai Chi, I would emphasize you're going to get a little bit of that. You're going to get a little bit of emotional balance, but not as much as Qigong. It will happen in a longer road, but you're going to get, balance, confidence, flexibility. You're going to keep your body healthy, like the door that moves doesn't squeak, all
Right.
those type of analogies. Um, and and then on either one of those, I really suggest, getting the tonic teas, because this fixes all the nutrient deficiencies in the modern day diet. And then, like Grandmaster Bala said, there was no masters that didn't take the tonics. You couldn't train long enough. You couldn't recover fast enough to continue the training without the tonics. And then when I went and studied with Ron Teagarden, the master of dragon herbs, he made a statement which confirmed that. He said that really he should have hundreds of Olympic gold medals and Grammys and awards, because all his clients are the ones that are doing that.
Mm.
His clients, the ones that are taking the tonic herbs, are the ones that are completing the books because they have a little bit more endurance. They're the professional athletes because now they can recover faster. These are the movie stars that can act all day or whatever it may be. It's here's your normal ability, and you're on the tonics, and it goes like this. You can take a little less sleep, little more stress, little more rigorous training, little quicker recovery.
Right.
And so if you can only go like this a little bit, that's 10% on all aspects of your life. So just like he said, the tonics today are needed more than they were in the past, because the diet today is worse.
It is significantly. So what would you recommend as far as starting off on tonics and teas and herbs and tinctures? What do you have in mind as far as basics?
Something
Yes,
basic like a spring dragon tea.
I have a lady that was hooked on that, by the way.
There's some products out there where the seed drops. This was designed for people that do Qigong and Tai Chi to move the energy through the meridians. And then, I have like my own brand.
Yep, that's good stuff.
Cool thing about this, I made this, and then when I found Ron Teagarden's, these formulas are almost exactly alike, and I never even knew this formula.
Wow.
It's almost identical to mine.
Wow.
Showing if you know formulas, there's a certain way that you would create them to make them work. And so
that's beautiful.
Just diving into some tonics and some herbs, and
where can we find those?
Started a little bit. What's that?
Where can we find those?
On my website.
Is he plugging himself right now?
Yeah.
Put yourself out there, Jason.
Center. Really easy to remember. Naturally Organic Center. And I have all the tonic teas on there. But if not, just go to Dragon Herbs. The information is for people if they buy there or not. I'm not mattered. So yeah, just getting involved in a little bit of tonics. And the way I see it now, like my training now, people will come over. Like I had a student right before today, made a pot of tea, come over, you pour the tea, I'll write out the outline of what we're going to do on the board. And we're sharing this tea and this camaraderie for a moment. And we're getting these good nutrients in our body. So then after that, then we do our practice, and it's like we're circulating all these nutrients through our body.
Letting them run their course.
And then when we're done and we go back and we have another cup, this helps us remember then and maybe be inspired to practice some more.
Right.
So there's so many little whys that you should, drink tea before or after, or have some little ceremony or something before or after your training that helps solidify it.
Awesome. I think it's the entire package that you're embodying. It's not just the physical, it's the emotional, the spiritual. You're putting good stuff into your body, so when you do practice, it's just going to be that much more holistic and that much more plush. So
sure.
I love that. Well, I think we had a good conversation, man. This has been great. Everybody, this is JC Cox. He is in DC, or not DC. He's in Las Vegas. And I think it is worth your time to message him, call him if you guys want teas, if you guys want medical Qigong. I don't want to say that wrong. And then if you guys want to learn any Tai Chi and you're out that area, or if you want to take his online courses, hit him up. This is the man. All right.
Two websites. One is earthpowers.com or becomeqigong.com. Become Qigong is easier to remember. And Naturally Organic Center sells all my teas and all my courses and stuff like that. So yeah, no, I was really looking forward to this. And yeah, I have another class that I'm going to right now. So this was a pleasure, Nick.
Definitely, JC. Thank you very much, brother.